Happy Mother's Day to all women in the UK, and I'll say, and also like in all parts of the world. Women are so special that we get to, be celebrated twice in a year. I would say three times, especially those of us in the UK. First, International Women's Day, and two, Mother's Day, if you happen to be in the UK, and also, the grand one, which is, actually celebrated all over the world. That's in May. So those of us in the UK, to our grandmothers, to all mothers, to our sisters, to our aunties, and also to all women in our lives who care for us and also who love us unconditionally. I would like to say, today is your day. Enjoy it and be happy. So happy Mother's Day once again. Today we are going to treat an important topic: leadership crisis in Africa. What is leadership? To me, leadership simply means service. I don't know how you describe leadership. Before we start, I just want you to share this interview because we are just going to enlighten our youth. We are just going to help shift or shape their mindset about leadership. And also invite as many friends as you can, as usual, so that we can all be educated and also be empowered. And today, just like I said, we're talking about leadership. Leadership, as we all know, pervades every aspect of human life and existence in nations, in communities, in our churches, and also, everywhere where, human life is found. However, studies, have proven that many years ago, before Africans became colonized by our Europeans, we governed ourselves, through our chiefs, our clans, etc. And, the type of system that we practiced, was gerontocracy and also monarchy. Hence, there's now the system, combined with our culture or religion, became interwoven. Hence, the crisis of this leadership that we find in Africa. So today, I have two gentlemen all the way from United States of America who are just going to be enlightening us about the amazing things they are doing all like over in America, trying to educate the youth. So I have with me today Mr. Kwadwo Frimpong, who is the media relations director, for media relations and for AfroWeek International Organization. And I have with me also the executive director for AfroWeek International Organization, also Settle International Organization. Gentlemen, welcome to the Inside View.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be here.
Good. Today we're going to be be educated, and also as to why living in your comfort zones in America, traveling all the way in Africa to educate people on leadership. And you don't just do yours on bigger platforms, but then you are tackling, the grassroots. That really touched my heart, actually reading, just a little bit about what you do. So tonight, for the sake of our viewers, we just want to know a little bit, just a little bit about yourselves. So if, Nana, if you can go first for me, please.
Well, as you introduced me, my name is Nana Osei-Bonsu Jr. I am a servant of AfroWeek International Organization and Certo Leadership International. It's a youth leadership organization, and our aim is to educate or re-educate the youth on the principles and the true definition of leadership in order to help them identify their gifts serve them to their generation, and make a positive impact wherever they find themselves. We're very much dedicated to, especially the African youth, or so to speak, the marginalized youth. So that is basically who I am, and I am solely dedicated to this cause. Thank you.
If Kajo, if you can also,
Oh yeah.
just
Uh,
a brief introduction about yourself, please.
my name is Kwadwo Awua Frimpong. I am also a servant of SETO and AfriWeek, which are just acronyms for service to humanity and for an African with a changed mentality. We believe that our concept of leadership is very, very different from what the real understanding of leadership is. And we also believe that for all the myriad of problems that we face on our continent, it can only be solved by understanding the real principles that underpin leadership, so that it's like putting the cart before the horse. Yeah, the horse can push the cart and you might get somewhere, but how fast? So we believe that if we put leadership first and we understand leadership first, all the other problems will get behind it. And then we can move at the pace that we need to move, because we are the dark continent. That is the perception, both within and without. And unless we are able to change our paradigm of leadership, we are not going anywhere. So that's why we are truly and solely dedicated to re-educating the youth of Africa about what leadership is and should be. Thank you.
Actually, move your camera slightly because you are.
Oh, okay. I think this way is
Yes,
better.
better. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Today we are talking about leadership crisis in Africa. So, to you, what is leadership?
All right. Leadership, I believe that, as Mr. Kwadwo said, has been misconstrued, um, especially by Africans or people on the African continent. So many factors goes into why leadership has been misconstrued, but I guess we're not going to go deep into that. But we are going to jump from what leadership is not.
Okay.
Most of the time, when we have lectures and talks, some of the things we love to start with is to ask the youth what leadership is.
Okay.
And especially, you realize that the youth from Africa have a different perspective of leadership, or they have a different understanding of leadership. And leadership, most of the time, when you ask, people think it is power, people think it's influence,
Mm-hmm.
people think it is authority, people think it is charisma. All of these things are misconceptions of leadership. Leadership is none of these things. As a matter of fact, for instance, let me take influence. Influence can never come without a gift.
Wow.
So, like Mr. Wu said, we're trying to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
You see, influence is a fruit of leadership, is a fruit of the gift, but that is not the gift. And most of the time, people think that leading is the same as leadership. I always say that leading is a verb, is a doing word. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is a noun. You have to become. So, leadership is a gift to serve humanity. Leadership is an attitude that we need to cultivate. It is a principle that we need to understand for us to be able to serve our community and our generation. Leadership is not for that who is leading a people. Leadership is for the one who is cultivating and coordinating resources to the benefit of a community. So that is leadership. I believe Mr. Kwadwo would want to add something to
Yes.
it.
Yes. Just to add to what Mr. Osei-Bonsu said, if you really look at leadership, there are two aspects that we must focus on. First is the responsibility, and then the other one is the perks, or
The reward.
the rewards that accrue to you because you are a leader. You see,
Yeah.
the only reason why we put somebody into leadership is the responsibilities, never the rewards or the perks. They come as a consequence of your leadership role. And when you go to the Western world, you see this clearly defined. Whereas when we go to our side of the world, you see that it is rather the rewards and the perks that people concentrate on. So we have it turned upside down, so to speak. So our idea of what a leader is when that leader can build 20 houses, he has a fleet of cars, people actually serve him, he's given the high seat when he goes to functions and all that. That is not leadership. They are the perks that become associated with leadership. And this, or some of these things, are some of the miseducation that we are talking about, that the African youth have been sort of miseducated when it comes to what a leader should be. So when you go to the primary schools, you go to the secondary schools, and even the universities, and you ask people about who a leader is, these are some of the things that they are going to talk to you about. You see, they will not talk to you about the fact that a leader has a contract with his people about executing the priorities for which he was brought in, which is organize resources to the benefit of his community. That's why we have leaders who have not actually achieved anything, but we are hailing them for the little that they do.
Okay.
If the people really understood what the leader is supposed to be doing, they might have a different understanding of whether this person is a leader or the person is not. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Having listened to both of you, you know, I don't know whether you listened to my intro. There's this discourse, between our traditional way of ruling our people and also this modern, democratization. I just want to ask you, is it true that the colonial era brought in the negative faces of the leadership crisis Africa is currently, experiencing? What do you think about that? Because I think that is
That is. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Please conclude your.
no. I was just asking, don't you think that that is where the crisis is stemming from? I mean, do you want me
Yes.
to, go over the question again, or it's
No. I got the question, but I was
okay?
waiting for you to land.
Okay, that's okay.
Yes. It is remember when I was doing the introduction, the initial introduction, I said there are so many factors
Good.
which led to our current status.
Okay.
Colonization is one of them, is one of the factors. The whole concept of colonization
Mhm.
was not just to create a colony. The whole concept of colonization was to perpetually put us in a place where the Western world can always take from. So, in order for us to be in that place, our structure, our system has to be dismantled,
Okay.
and a new concept has to be introduced. One of them is schooling,
Good.
not education, schooling. And so they set up a school system. And I'm pretty sure somebody might be thinking, what's the difference between schooling and education?
Yeah.
Schooling, the simplest way I explain it to people is that schooling will teach you what to do, but education will help you to identify who you are for you to know what to do.
Powerful.
So schooling is a tool to control the people, is a tool to control your mind. One of the things colonization did to Africa was to break down our system. One, before the Western world came to Africa, they came in at the wrong time for Africa, but at the right time for them.
Okay.
Because Africa was in the phase of trying to determine their boundaries naturally. And that is how every developed country determines its boundaries. They fight. The kingdoms will fight,
Mhm.
take over boundaries, and determine boundaries naturally. By so doing, you have very few languages because the bigger languages will swallow up the little languages. And
Sure.
so, by so doing, you have very few languages. By
Mhm.
so doing, you have very few demarcations. So, for instance, if the Western world had not interrupted Africa's process of development, we would have probably have had about 4 countries in Africa,
Mhm.
if not less, because you had the Zulu kingdom, you had the Asante kingdom,
Mhm.
and then you have the Mali Empire. So these were the major kingdoms in Africa who were fighting to determine. So when you take a look at the Asante, the original Asante map, it is not what we see today. It encompasses some parts of Ivory Coast.
Wow.
So the
And
kings
Togo.
were fighting, yeah, in Togo, the kings were fighting to determine their natural boundaries. And it's part of the process of development. But unfortunately for us, when the Western world interrupted, they decided that they're going to take advantage of what was going on. And they knew that that was a natural process, but they were going to interrupt the natural process. So that is why I said the agenda was not just to colonize the people
Mhm.
or to create a colony, but the agenda was to dismantle the system and create a system where they can perpetually be taken from us. And they've been taken from us since then up
Mhm.
till now, and they are still taking.
Mhm.
In it, just before I land, I just want to go back a little bit and talk about the leadership question you asked. You cannot have leadership without a gift.
Okay.
So we don't just put people in place. There's a difference between the leadership gift and
Mhm.
the leadership office. That is where most of the time people have it confused. So when you don't have the gift, you don't have an office. And if you don't have an office, you don't have an influence.
Wow.
We'll talk about that later, but let's continue with
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the current
Yeah.
discussion.
I mean, I just want you to talk about, your NGOs. But before that, we all know that leadership is one of the essential determinants in every society. So, what are the attributes and also traits of who a good leader should be?
So basically, one of the things you hear people ask is, are leaders born or made?
Mhm.
And both applies to leadership. We are all, or we were all born leaders.
Mhm.
And in order for us to become quote unquote good leaders, we have to be made. So we have to go through the process. It's just like when you have a seed of an orange. I can say, and it's a matter of truth, that even though I have a seed, I have a tree, an orange tree, because the tree dwells in that seed. It has to go through a process to become the tree. And so every human being born on earth has a gift of leadership. Everybody has a gift of leadership. Some people don't identify it. Some people refuse to identify it because they are coveting other people's gifts. Some people don't know how to identify it. And so they become followers for the rest of their lives. And some people identify it and they make an impact in their society. So if you have the gift, you develop that gift, you serve that gift to your community, that makes you a good leader. And the reason I'm putting them in quotes is that when you talk about leadership, there is nothing like a good leader or a bad leader. You have a good person or a good leading and a bad leading, but leadership is always good.
Good. Yes.
So, Mr. Kwadwo will continue from there.
Yeah. Based on what Nana is saying, every individual, you are innately gifted by your creator with certain abilities that are unique only unto yourself. And until you identify those gifts, which you can actually develop and serve to your community, it doesn't matter where we put you, you will misfunction. So the first principle is to understand that you are born a leader, but you have to become, which is grow and sharpen the innate characters or abilities that has been imbued within you, like the mango tree that we are describing. The seed is a mango tree. You have to put it in the soil, you have to water it, you have to prune it, you have to give it time to develop. And anytime you truncate the process at any point, you are not going to get any mango fruit. And if a mango tree do not produce fruit that we can actually use, then what is its use? So anytime somebody jumps ahead of the development process and becomes put in place, that's where you see the misapplication of the leadership principles that we are talking about, that we on our side of the pond suffers a lot from, because we are putting square pegs in round holes. And whenever you do that, like my colleague said, there is no bad leadership. There can be a bad person leading and there can be a good person leading. But whenever you see progress in society, rest assured it is coming from a leader.
Oh.
And whenever you see dysfunction in any society, in any process, it is because of the absence of a leader.
And so, to add to the principles, there are so many principles. We have slews of principles of leadership, which we need to cultivate. It, like Mr. Awua said, it doesn't come overnight. So that is why I always tell people, I don't care who comes up to give promises during the campaign period. The most important thing is, has this person exhibited some of these leadership principles in the course of his or her time? So if you have not, then I'm sorry, you're going to repeat whatever you came to criticize, because it does not take overnight. And it's nothing. It's not emotional. It's a matter of principles. So we have leadership. We have principle of process, which is Mr. Wu's favorite principle.
Oh, yeah.
Principle of process. So when you discover your gift, there is a process the gift will have to go through. And there is a time for you to begin to serve that gift. So we have leadership of time and a principle of time and timeliness. Principles of integrity. That's one of my favorite principles. Principles of integrity. And these are all principles we need to cultivate. It comes with a gift. So when you refuse to cultivate these principles and you want to rely on charisma, as we've seen, especially in Africa, we've had people leading with lots of charisma, but no character, no principles. So until we begin to understand that we have to cultivate those principles of leadership in order for us to be able to be ready when it's time for us to serve. Because just like cooking, you need to gather your ingredients,
Yeah.
put them in a bowl. It has a process, it has time. Maybe you fry the tomatoes for 5 minutes and then you have to put the pepper in it. There's a process. And when it's time for the food to come together to become food for somebody to consume, then it's ready to be served. And so is leadership. And unfortunately, in our part of the world, one, there is no leadership. And two, the principles are thrown all over the place. You hear people talking about a man of integrity, and yet sometimes I don't know if it is the misunderstanding of the word or it is the
I think
beauty
so.
of the word that makes them throw them around.
I think so because you've given, a broader insight as to what leadership is. Because I am being educated tonight as to who or what a leader or leadership is. But like we all know that where we all come from, it's a different meaning altogether. Where like I was so glad that you mentioned about during election where people come and talks big, giving big promises because they've actually stated the people to know that at least we can buy them, we can shower them with gifts, presents, or whatever, and then they will vote for us. But then we've not been educated enough to know who or the qualities that we should actually look out for in a leader before we vote them into power. Because you just said we don't have leaders in Africa. And that is such a bold statement to make, to say that we don't have leaders. And I'm thinking, somebody watching some of my thinking, what do you mean we don't have leaders in Africa? We don't have leaders. I want you to talk about, AfriWeek. What motivated you to set up this amazing non-governmental um, organization? What motivated you to do this? Because it looks like you are way ahead of your generation. Talking about this, and it's so in depth. What motivated you to set up AfriWork?
So, just as you said, the lack of leadership on the continent of Africa, um, we have a lot of people leading, but we don't have leaders.
Okay.
One of the, should I say, the results of leadership
Mm,
is the progress
okay.
within that community. I always say leaders don't lead people,
Yeah.
they grow leaders.
Okay.
So if you have leaders in a community, it has to reflect in the lives of the people. And so growing up in Africa, we saw what was going on around us. We read about some leaders. We saw some people pop up on the scene, so passionate with vim and power and charisma. And you think this is going to be the turning point of this country,
Yeah.
because of the misconception we had then about leadership. And then somewhere along the line, you realize the whole thing fizzled out and we're back to square one. And it keeps happening over and over. So then it prompted us to start asking questions. What is missing here? What is going on? And sometimes you get some excuses, let me put it that way. I was going to use a word which was not very pleasant, so I had to think about it. You get some excuses that, Africans were created differently. Africans were cursed. Africans were, a whole bunch of crazy excuses. And so that
Mm-hmm.
threw us into a mode of research.
Okay.
And we decided to do a lot of research, and we came to the conclusion that it is not rocket science. It is purely the absence of leadership, the misunderstanding of leadership. So that was what motivated us to put together this organization. And then we also decided that we are going to be strategic in our dealings when it comes to this leadership um, organization. We are going to target the youth, the younger ones, because in the course of our research, we also realized that when somebody is from 25 going upwards, their mindset is shaped up. You know, their thinking has already taken the pattern. It's towing, so it's hard for you to steer them away from what they've already um, been told, or what they've been doing for over 25 years.
Yeah.
So we decided to target the younger ones, knowing and believing that when we educate them
Mm-hmm.
of the true definition of leadership, then we should be able to grow a new breed and a new generation of leaders who have a different understanding. And when it is time for them to serve, they would be able to serve with the proper understanding and with the proper perspective of leadership, and be able to move our continent from that place of hopelessness to a place of hope. So that is what motivated us to come up with the organization, African International Organization. As Mr. Awua said, it's an acronym meaning an African with a changed mentality. Most of the things we do is to try to change the mindset, because that is the engine room, that is the powerhouse. If you change the mindset, every other thing will follow.
Wow. Wow. So, how often do you embark on such an academy? Do you visit Africa? I mean, that often? I mean, how do you do it?
Um, Mr. Wu, do you want to take that?
Yeah. Yeah, because oh yeah, since you're the media relations, yeah, usually.
The understanding is that we need the resources to be able to go back home and
Okay.
be able to talk to people on the ground. Now, we've started about 6, 7 years ago going to the primary schools, the middle schools, the secondary schools, the universities, holding seminars, talks, going to the radio and TV stations and talking to people. But so far, we've been sort of localized in Ghana. We had this plan of going to one African country each year, but we've not reached that point yet. But we plan, and the plan is already in place, to have chapters in our schools where it becomes like a debate club, so that people can actually talk about the principles that we are trying to inculcate in them. Somebody might ask even how we got to this point. And now Osei-Bonsu has been my roommate for years. He is a Pan-Africanist. I'm a Pan-Africanist. He was more veered towards the Nkrumah's side of the divide. I was veered towards the Buzia Dankwa side of the divide. But we came to the conclusion that the issue was not the political systems that were being played out before our eyes. The issue was the misunderstanding of what a leader should be and what he should do. Let me give you an example. Africans have always believed in strong men, the Mobutus, the Rawlinses, the whatever you want to call them, strong men, so-called strong men. So we neglected the most important aspect of any social system, which is the systems that should underpin the society in which we live. You see, so we have taken upon ourselves to try every system of governance under the sun: monarchy, what do we call it? independence that gave us political system. We had coup d'etats bringing in these strong men, and then we came back to democracy, different forms of democracy. None has worked, simply because our understanding of who the leader himself should be is not there. And these were the sort of arguments and debates and research that we were doing as roommates. And that's what brought us to these conclusions that it is actually our understanding of leadership and its concepts that makes us so backward, to use a very bad word. Now, when you ask most of our peers who are over 40 years, they will tell you, as for the African, there's no hope for him. Why do we say that? Because we believe that the core of the people is bad, and that there is nothing you can do to change anything within Africa. We disagree, because every society that has progressed, every progressive society that you see, somebody came out of the people who were supposedly bad to change the systems. Yeah. So it is always an outlier, somebody with a different mentality. You go back home and they say, oh, this is how we do it always. And my first question is it working?
No.
So it takes somebody who is an outlier to actually interrogate the system and ask, if this is how we've been doing it for 40 years and it's not working, can we try a different path? And you find out that these are the people who we call leaders, because they have taken the time to identify their gifts. They have actually educated themselves about their abilities. They have developed that gift that God has given to them. And now they are ready to implement the last stage, which is service to the community. They are not there for the community to serve them, but they are actually there to come and solve the problems that is very systemic within their society. And when Nana says there are no leaders in Africa, they say that by their fruits you shall know them.
No, yeah.
If there were wonderful, great leaders, we should see it in the systems and the lives of the people, because your duty, the whole duty of a leader, is to make your society progressively better. We believe in the principle of process. We don't think the moment you come into power, things are going to magically change. It doesn't happen anyway. But if you see a system, a society in which progressively things are getting better, you know there's good leadership, or there is leadership, I should say. Now, the Kumasi I knew in 1992, when I got out of Form 5, it's a far cry from the Kumasi I know today. Things have really deteriorated. It is not the Kumasi I knew. So nobody can convince me that there's leadership. That's what we are trying to say. By their fruits, we shall know them. And we have also come to the conclusion that everything under the sun is leadership. The rest is just effects. If you have the right kind of leadership within a society, over time, you will see that the society progressively moves into the positive column.
Okay. Before I go on to the next question, I just want to just suggest this to you. I mean, you've done amazingly well by organizing seminars, talking to schools. Is there any way that you can talk to the educational ministries or department?
I will let Nana take that.
Where we can have leadership as part of the school curriculum, or maybe a module that can be part of our educational system, where what you guys are talking about can be taught at a very, very early age, because by the 2021, 22, 23, you've already formed your habits, you've already formed your mindset. So okay, if I get into power, maybe I might do this, or but when we teach our children who a leader should be, or what a leader should be, then obviously it becomes part of their growing up. It becomes part of their makeup, where we wouldn't have to struggle to talk about some of these things. So is there any, have you made any headway in trying to maybe communicate, with our educational departments? I mean, if there's any way that maybe you can actually support in that way.
Actually, we have a proposal in place where we are trying to get to the Ministry of Education, not just only to introduce leadership into the schools, but to take a second look at the curriculum of our school system. Because the curriculum we're running now, which is the schooling system, is not helping the nation. And that is the more reason why they have a backlog of students come out of the university every year and they have no jobs for them. They have nothing for them to do. It is because we are running a schooling system. And that is what the system does. Remember, I said the school will tell you what to do. So now the school tells them there's nothing for us. There's nothing for you to do now. So you got to stay home after you come out of school. But when we educate the people, when they come out of school, they're not going to wait on you to employ them. So yes, there's a process. We have something in place. We have a proposal. We are trying to get to the Ministry of Education. But then again, the system is helping the people in power. The broken system is helping the people in power. So it is not going to be easy for you to come in and wanting to fix it. So it's even hard for us to sometimes get permission to go to the schools and talk to the kids about some of these important. And yet, when somebody takes some crazy program to the schools, you get everybody rallying around it. They take beauty pageants to the schools, and everybody is running around making sure this program is successful in the schools. And when you take an educational program, an important program to the schools, wanting to change the mindset of the students or the youth, you don't have many people trying to help push that agenda. So these are some of the blockades we come across, but it's not going to break us. We're not going to give up. We're going to push till we see some of these changes taking place. So yes, if anybody hears us and the person thinks they can lead us to some of these places where we can present our proposals. When we just came back from Ghana about a month or two ago, I spoke to a friend who was like, yeah, just present the proposal to the Ministry of Education. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I want to have a face to deal with. I'm not going to say, oh, I presented my proposal to the Ministry of Education, and they're going to tell you, who did you give it to? We can't even find it. So I want to have a face, somebody. I presented my proposal to XYZ because we don't just want it to be part of the stuff on the shelf collecting dust. So yes, we are in the process of doing that. And as I said, if anybody knows somebody who can help us, lead us to a face who we can talk to and dialogue with, we're very ready to do that.
Okay.
Can I come in here?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Let's go back to your question about whether colonialism has sort of helped with our understanding of leadership and our so-called education system, which is actually
expose,
yes,
the defects.
Yes.
Our system of leadership. Yeah.
Okay. The Caucasian came with one agenda to change us, make sure we are subservient to him forever. The second most important thing was to deplete our resources. We are just a farming area for the resources they need. So why should he educate you on how you can use these resources? Your only use is to be able to count and put together his resources, which he has deemed his because you are a colonial entity, and to ship it out to his factories and his manufacturing plants so that after it has been manufactured, it can be brought back to you for you to actually use your little end money and buy from them. They will never allow you to manufacture it or to use the resources at your disposal to help your community in the same way. So they need you to have basic understanding of arithmetic, to count, to record it, and to be able to understand that this is in the profit column, this is in the loss column. And that's what we've been doing forever. Even cocoa, up till today, we are exporting just beans. We don't even grind it to its next level. Now the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture is telling me that we cannot process cassava to industrial starch. Have you done the research? Have you done it? You are importing industrial starch, which is from cassava. Have you tried even researching your own cassava to see if it can produce industrial starch? Because you produce cassava. I can go on and on and on, but the point is this. Their intent, which was and is still today, is to allow you to be able to count and do basic calculations so that you can ship all your raw materials to them. I was trained as a natural resource manager. There is a paradigm. Resources are not, they become. It is not the resources on your land that is going to make you develop. What do you do with the resources? And as of today, we are just shipping them out every day because that is how we have been schooled.
Yeah.
Now look at our dependence on English or French or whatever language that they are giving us. I and Nana Osei-Bonsu sat down, we looked at the wise saying, the proverbs of our elders. We understand that it has so much wisdom in it. And if we were to start
Leadership principles.
Yes, if we were to start inculcating these principles in our children in the form of letting them understand that these are what shows leadership. Our elders and our old societies had these leadership principles concisely written down in the proverbs that we talk about. And it is all over Africa. It's not just in Ghana or in Nigeria or in Kenya. It is all over Africa. So why have we made somebody's language even the most important thing? Intelligence is determined by whether you can speak French or English. It's just a language.
I know. Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? So we need to go back to the table. And like he said, we have proposals, but will somebody listen to us? We are still trying.
That's it. This interview is getting hot. I mean, if you're still online, please share this video. Let's invite as many people as we can to tune in and be empowered, because knowledge is power. Talking about leadership, don't you think our form of leadership should be contextual, looking at how diverse we are as a continent, different cultures, different, diverse form of innovation and creativity? And don't you think our form of leadership should be contextual, to suit the needs of the people instead of just trying to compare it with the Western world? What do you think about that?
Yes, basically, like we said, leadership would have to be able to serve its community. So, yes, you're right. But you see, one beautiful thing about leadership is that it's a principle.
Mhm.
So it cuts across every tribe, creed, or people. The principles are the same everywhere. The principle of process. It has nothing to do with black people or Yorubas or Fantis or Ashantis. It runs through every creed. So the most important thing we would have to be worried about now is to be able to have people have the understanding of leadership, and then be able to educate our people on the principles of leadership. So when you take the principle and you cultivate that principle, it helps you know the needs of your community. And every leader, one of the underlying factors of leadership is that you would have to be solving problems. That is one of the responsibilities of a leader. That is why you have that gift. A gift is not meant for you to be a famous person. A gift is not meant for you to be rich. A gift is meant for you to solve problems within your community.
Wow.
So that is why everybody has a gift. Everybody has a leadership gift. Sometimes people think it is only those who occupy political position who are leaders. No, you need a leader in the political. I say this: we have leaders in professions, and we have professionals. I know that's going to be something,
That's very, very deep, yeah.
but we have leaders in professions,
Mhm.
and then we have the professionals. The leaders, you could tell by the way they conduct themselves. You could tell that they're there to serve the people. When we went to Ghana, I think we got lost or something, and we drove into the police depot.
Mm-hmm.
And the police officer, the first thing she did, she was a woman. The first thing she did was, "What do you want? You can't come here. You can't come here." So I was like,
Police station?
"Chill. You don't even know why we are here. Could it be somebody chasing us? Could it be that we're running from something?" As a police officer, your other name is even a peace officer. Your first reaction should be, "Can I help you?" You don't start intimidating the people. You understand? So when you see a leader within the police force, you can tell. And when you see a professional within the police force, you can tell. You understand? So leadership cuts across every creed, tribe, people. What we need to do is to educate ourselves on the true definition of leadership
Mhm.
and the principles of leadership, because it has no, the same principle you operate here in the United States is the same principles you operate in Ghana. The principle of integrity is no different in the United States. The principle of integrity is no different in Africa. And if you claim to be a leader, you want to serve your people, then you have to be trusted. How can the people trust you? You have to be a person of integrity. Integrity simply means integration of all your personalities. What you say and what you do must be integrated into one thing. They know Mr. Awua says he's going to come back. We know, come rain or shine, he's
Mhm.
going to come back
Do you know
because
what?
he's
I
a man
mean,
of integrity.
no, no, no. Uh, I'm just finished, but then I just wanted to just say something, because I think sometimes we have, the desire, or maybe the intention to enforce our laws and stuff like that. But the reason why I said leadership should be contextual, is we have a practice where, let's say, let me say, where is arrested, the police will follow all the due procedure to prosecute him and everything. And then you have one uncle, an influential uncle, that knows Mr. A knows Mr. B, And then eventually they sit down and, behind the scenes and, everything just gets. So in as much as the police or like any other institution wants to enforce those laws that we are talking about, sometimes our traditional, values or the way our system is being, I would say pan out, makes it a bit difficult for these institutions to enforce the kind of leadership that we would not actually find here. Because here, when you know that you fall foul of the law will take its due course. There will be no auntie, there will be no mister who, there will be nothing like that. So sometimes I know that, our leaders have good intentions, but at the same time, our traditional values also makes it very, very difficult for them to stick to what maybe they have in mind.
I'll let Mr. Hua take this.
He
I mean, it's an open
knows
discussion, so I mean,
he
that's what
knows this is one of my pet peeves. What do we mean by traditional? I am a Chi aficionado. When you were young and you get pregnant without being attached to a man, you were banished.
Yeah.
Was it not traditional?
Yeah.
They come at us and tell us, oh, because of our traditions, because of our languages, we cannot do these things in Africa. You are already copying something you cannot implement. Have you gone back to your own traditional systems and picked the things that actually worked within your systems and merge it with things that will work today? Have you done that? No. Have we even identified what should work for us? Look at Ghana's constitution. We just went there, picked and copied somebody's laws. We came and tried to implement it in our country. Nana Osei-Bonsu will tell you, how come we know that every year there is a noiseless month in Accra? That drumming is not allowed. Making noise is not allowed. It is not enshrined in our constitution. Is it? It is not.
No.
And then we have noise codes within Ghana, that there are certain areas that are called residential areas that you cannot make noise. And people are making noise. Where did we get these things from? Because we are copying from somewhere. It is not even about traditional. When they say traditional, ask them, what do you mean by traditional? Because they are just telling you that we want to circumvent the systems. We don't want the systems to work. That's what we are doing. When they talk about traditional, that is not true. If we really should go back and look at our traditional systems, you will be shocked by how effective they were, because they were really punitive back in the day. So when anybody comes to you and say, oh, because of our traditional and our differences, no. Before we started this journey, I didn't even know that there were so many differences in Europe. Look at Bulgaria and a few other countries that use two international languages. Look at the ethnicities that are involved in one country, like Belgium. Just take a look at Belgium and tell me if it's different from Ghana when it comes to the ethnicities and the languages that they have to use. Why is it working? Because somebody sits down and looks at the totality of the people, and they bring all stakeholders together and they talk about what will make the country work. So no country has a flawless system. That's why we call them progressive societies. When something becomes systemically wrong, they find solutions to it. The difference between the developed and the undeveloped world is that when we find repeated problems, we close our eyes and we blame our culture, our traditions. They are just excuses. They are not true. If we really want to solve the problem, there are solutions for the problems.
That's amazing.
Just to add a little to it, I believe Mr. Awua said something about us researching into the Proverbs, and you realize that our culture rewards good behavior and they punish bad behavior.
Mm.
So there is a proverb which says, "Akwala akwala hunu ne nsa hohoro a ɔne mpanimfoɔ edidi."
Yeah.
So it tells you that this is a culture or a tradition that rewards good behavior,
Mm.
and they would equally punish bad behavior. It is the corrupt nature of the people in position
Mm.
who would do stuff like, oh, the uncle came to talk to me, so let me let it go. I've been watching this series called 24. It's a series here. And the president had her daughter involved in some dubious activities. It was reported to the president. And the person who reported it to the president told the president, I am not going to take any sides, but I would respect whatever decision you make. If you want us to kill this story here, I will go for it. But your decision is paramount. The president looked at her daughter and said, honey, I love you, but the law must work.
Wow. Wow.
And this is leadership. This is somebody who understands the principle of integrity. So, as Mr. Wu said, sometimes it is corrupt people who are trying to display their so-called good nature to please other people under the guise of tradition.
Mm.
Our tradition does not reward bad behavior.
Wow. Mr. Osei-Bonsu, I know you've written a book on leadership. I would want you to show us the book and also maybe talk a little bit about your book. I mean, just in case if anybody wants to lay a hand on your book, tell us where maybe they can find it. And
Okay,
also,
this is how it looks like. I don't know if you guys can see it.
it says Breaking the Myth.
Breaking the myth of leadership,
Good.
the solution to Africa's crisis.
Wonderful. Wonderful. If anyone
So
is watching us, Mr. Osei-Bonsu, Nana Osei-Bonsu Jr. has written a book on leadership, Breaking the Myth of Leadership. The crisis,
the
sorry,
solution to Africa's crisis.
the solution to Africa's crisis. So we can, buy this book, read it, and get educated. And, together we can all shift our mindset on these crises in Africa. Before we go on, there's something that's really on my mind. I just want us to talk about. Do you think Africa as a continent, you know, we are responding well to the changing paradigms, like globalization, world perspectives, technology, international speed of events, and democratization, considering the fact that the youth are daily losing faith and confidence in our leaders and also in the institutions that they represent? Because I can tell that, their faith in our leaders are dwindling, or I'll say evaporating at a very, very fast rate. That if we are not careful, I don't know maybe the future might hold for us, but it's very, very, very serious. Do we think we are we've responded well to these things I've actually talked about?
The answer is a big no. We have not. Even though the opportunity comes, we don't create the opportunities. The opportunities are thrown at us, and we
Mm-hmm.
still don't take advantage of it. It's a big no. One of the things, let me digress a little bit.
Okay.
If we get leaders in Africa, it's not going to take us centuries to see progress in Africa. And Rwanda has shown us the way. About 30 years ago, nobody dreamt of seeing the Rwanda we are seeing today about 30 years ago. They were hacking themselves to death
Mm.
until a people stood up and said, nah, we have to behave like human beings who have brains to develop. So if we get leaders on the continent of Africa, it's not going to take us centuries. We can see progress within some few years. With that aside, no, one of the things I always say, look at this COVID-19 pandemic. This was an opportunity, or probably still is an opportunity, thrown at us, Africa. Africa is a place of medicine. We should be able to produce or provide a solution to this pandemic to the world if we had leaders, and yet we're not taking advantage of it. We're not doing anything about it. And I can tell you, I can give you countless number of times where people are using traditional herbal medicine. Let me not even say traditional, herbal medicine to cure and to fight this COVID-19 successfully. There are even some of these herbal doctors. You see, before we had people who would live in the villages or within certain communities, and they would be doing this herbal medicines and they had no knowledge of medicine, let me say scientific knowledge of medicine, or academic knowledge of medicine. So they sometimes miss the doses and stuff like that, and it becomes a problem and all that. Now we have medical doctors who've been to school, and they have come out to realize that they cannot do without the herbs.
Wow.
And some of them are going back to the herbs. I mean, a whole bunch of them are going back to the herbs, developing these herbs to help cure diseases and sicknesses within our community. And what do they get? They get a fight from the organized system, the so called medical institutions fighting these doctors. You see, and you can tell all over Africa, we are so much blessed with some of these herbs, and COVID-19 showed up and we are not taking advantage of it. Ebola showed up, we didn't take advantage of it. Malaria showed up, we didn't take advantage of it. Recently, the Western world has provided a solution to malaria. They don't have malaria. So why would they commit their resources to finding solution to malaria? We have malaria. We should be concerned about malaria.
Yeah.
We had Ebola some years back, I believe in the 70s or so. It killed a bunch of people. It went away and we went back to sleep. And then it came up again. And again, the Western world will have to come to our aid. I mean, it is so disheartening to see us live this way. So no, we're not taking advantage of anything that is thrown at us. We don't go out to create the opportunities. And even when the opportunities come to us, we still don't take advantage of it. And sometimes it is sad for what is going on the continent. But I hope and pray that one day a Magufuli will wake up, or a Magufuli will show up on the continent of Africa, at least one in every country, to be able to avert what is going on, because it is hopelessness glaring at the youth of Africa. No wonder the youth is running out of the continent. Some of them will have to go by boat, even though they know they're going to die. I watched a documentary and I was so sad. One of the guys was questioned. They were like, don't you think this is so dangerous? He said, I would prefer to die in the process of wanting to make something out of my life than living here and be useless. That is the kind of hopelessness glaring are the youth of Africa. And so, if we really want to make a change, then we have to start using this thing that God gave to us, because this thing is one of the most powerful instruments or organs that can take us out of what we are in, the mess we are in today. Mr. Awua, I guess you want to add some to it.
Yeah, it's a big no for me, because the first and the simplest of all the processes that we should have done years back is unite. We've heard African unite for years. We started this issue of uniting and having one economic and political continent before Europe was talking about the EU. Kwame Nkrumah had it written down. He had it disseminated to political leaders across the continent, but because of selfish ambitions and egos, as of today, even our continental bodies' headquarters had to be built by China. That is how sad our situation is. So if the youth is running away, nobody should question them, because they don't see leadership in Africa. Let me tell you, our research told us that less than 1% of GDP is used on the African continent for research. Less than 1%. How are you going to move forward when less than 1% of your GDP goes back to study what is wrong with yourself so you can improve? Another research tells us that the amount of money that we borrow and the amount of money that our own leaders steal and stash outside is more than what we borrow from outside.
Wow.
How are we going to? We are not talking about the raw materials that are taken out with that accountability and come back to us 10 times the price for us to buy. That's not what we are talking about. We are talking about the amount of money that is siphoned out of Africa on a daily basis by our own leaders. They go and stash it somewhere, and then we go and borrow the same money with interest. So when you talk about the youth losing hope, these are the signs that tells you that they are losing hope. That's why they are leaving the continent in flux, because somebody else has use for this youth.
Like you're talking about selfishness. Do you think selfish governance is a threat to good governance in Africa? Is selfish leadership a threat to good governance in Africa?
Yeah, selfishness is a threat to anything good anywhere. And selfishness is a product of misunderstanding of life. Selfishness is a product of insecurity. So yes, selfishness is one of the major should I say plagues in Africa. But then again, as we said, if we understood leadership, that wouldn't be the case. Because leadership is selfless.
Selfless, yeah. Okay.
Can I come in here too? People make the mistake of thinking that it is only in Africa that people are selfish. Now, if you allow the human being, 90% of people everywhere will take advantage of a system that does not punish.
Okay.
Every human being is selfish. And my understanding of life is this: consequence is not coincidence. If you do not put in a system that has no respect for people, for position and for honor, that will punish bad behavior, people will take advantage of the system. Do you know how much of the American population, the percentage of the American population that is incarcerated? You'll be surprised. It's they are not good here. Nobody is good on their own. If you allow people to misuse a system, they will.
Yeah.
And because having the ability to misuse the systems reside in the corridors of power, those people in power in Africa has no incentive to put in place anything that will check that selfishness. And until we do that, we will continue to be complainants, but we are not going to go anywhere.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's interesting. We cannot talk about leadership and not talk about rule of law. Would you agree with me that where we all hail from, we practice rule by law, but no rule of law? Would you agree with me on that?
Yes, ma'am.
You see, I was actually going to go there, but I'm glad you introduced that topic, the rule of law. It is a foundational pillar of democracy. Sometimes you hear people, and sometimes it's sad when I hear schooled people who are respected in their communities say democracy is not for Africa. Democracy is a foreign institution. That is not true. Democracy is a human institution. It is not a foreign institution. Democracy hinges on the rule of law. Democracy hinges on the freedom of the people. Democracy hinges on justice for all. These are foundational pillars of democracy, and it's a human concept. It is not a Western concept. Now, the problem we're having in Africa is that because we are not educated but schooled, and that is one of the dangerous things you can do to a community when you school them without education. Schooling does not give you, it does not unlock. I found the brain to be one of the most interesting and powerful organs God gave to humanity. If you need to unlock certain parts of your brains to be able to function as a normal human being, and a school would only unlock one part where you can take in information and store information. Education unlocks the other part where you would process that information to give you an understanding of who you are. And that part we don't process in Africa. So democracy, the rule of law, is a human idea. It is not a Western idea. But what we need to do is to set up systems that understands our culture and our environment to help us propagate our democracy. Because democracy, it's a Greek word, demokratias, meaning the rule of the people or the power of the people. So democracy had to evolve around the people. That is why when you take any constitution of a country, it talks about we the people, because it is about the development of the people. So the party politics is not democracy. Party politics is a system the Western world put together to help them propagate their democracy. We need to set up our own system to help us propagate our democracy. You see, but when they school us, it makes us think that party politics is part of democracy. And so every 4 years we go to the ballot box and we think we're practicing democracy. We are not. If you're practicing the democracy, then the rule of law must be paramount. If you're practicing democracy, justice must be paramount. If you're practicing democracy, then the freedom of the people must be paramount.
Mm.
Now, I'm not talking about liberties, I'm talking about freedom.
Freedom.
There's a
Yeah.
difference between freedom and liberties.
Mm.
So if these things are missing and all you do is to go to the ballot box every 4 years, I'm sorry, that's not democracy.
Good. Let me say
So
what
the
you want
rule
to
of law
yeah.
is very important, and it's a human idea. It's not a Western idea.
Good.
So if you look at democracies across the world, the UK practices a form of democracy in which you vote for a pardon. A pardon. You don't vote for an individual. So the party chooses who becomes the prime minister, right?
Yeah.
You come to America, it's totally different. The party chooses an individual and people go vote for the individual. They don't vote for the party.
Mm-hmm.
You see, you go to Belgium, you go to Germany, the chancellor can run for 10, 15 terms until the party that he or she holds decides that they will not choose him or her as the leader.
Yeah.
All these societies have looked at their environment, what they want to achieve, the best route through which they can achieve those things.
Mm.
But you see that in all these societies, the principles of democracy that we are talking about, rule of law, justice, respect for human rights, and all that, they are embedded in their systems. It's not just going to the ballot box. That is just the facade that we have been given, that
Yeah.
once we say there is a free and fair election, this is democracy. It's not true. So if the 4-year term, the revolving door of politicians and parties coming into power is not working for us, it is time for us to go back to the drawing board and re-evaluate what we are doing. Is it helping our society? Is it moving us forward? Those are the things that will tell us whether we are practicing democracy or not. Because as far as I'm concerned, the people at the constituency level don't have any power in Ghana. They don't.
It's true.
You see, and as long as the people do not have any power to change anything, you are not practicing democracy. You just practicing a facade of the concept.
Do they even know the power the politicians, the political managers have is theirs?
No, 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 no. I mean, not at all. I mean, in trying to solve, the leadership crisis in Africa, how do we create leadership developments? Programs that can be relevant to our new world, especially to restore the faith of our youth. I mean, what are some of the leadership programs that can, any models that you can, plan anything? I mean, what are some of the leadership,
In
programs
the
that you
long
can,
term,
yeah, long term.
the schooling system has to be changed to an educational system where the gifts of the youth would be harnessed. And education does not teach you new things. Education helps you to identify who you are.
Okay.
And if we really want to solve the problem, the long term solution will be to dismantle the current schooling system and put in place an educational system that will help the youth identify their gifts, help them develop them, and serve their generation or their communities. In a short term, our political managers, let's hope and pray they get some.
Epiphany.
I have to think fast, not
I
to
know.
let some words come out of my mouth. You know, to be able to first of all pause and ask the question, what is wrong? Number one. Number two, bring the community together. When I say bring the community together, bring people within the community We're not talking about the um, the aristocrats in the community. When you're bringing the people together, bring intelligent people together. The person could be a fisherman. The person could be somebody selling in the market, but intelligent.
Mm.
We have all these people who are educated, but they are not schooled.
Okay. I like that one.
You
Educated
know,
but school.
yes, we have all these people who are educated, but not schooled, who are intelligent and they can come to the drawing board and begin to think about the problems and how we can solve the problem. That will be a short term solution. That will be a first step in starting to move towards the right direction
Mm.
until we decide to pause and bring stakeholders together to think through the problems and the solution. Because you see, the market woman knows what is going on in the market.
Yeah.
She understands what is going on in the market. Let me rephrase my the educated market woman
Mm-hmm.
understands what is going on in the market. So she can bring on board what is going on in the market, the problems in the market.
Mm.
And then the solution can be found by all stakeholders. Mr. Kwadwo made mention of the Ghana traditional drumming of banning of drums at a certain point in time when they were formulating the constitution. Who even thought that let us bring the Ghana Traditional Council on board? Let us discuss this particular issue, how we can enshrine this within our constitution.
Yeah.
Nobody thought about that. And so every year you have churches colliding with traditional council,
Yeah.
the Ghana Traditional Council, because the churches will say, it is my right. The constitution gives me that right. So if we would want to solve the problem, the short term, we had to pause, think through these issues, bring stakeholders. We cannot do without bringing stakeholders together.
Mm.
Somebody sits up there and he thinks he knows the problems down there. That's a lie. There are people down there, the cocoa farmer, the educated fisherman,
Mm.
the educated market woman, even the educated street hawker. Bring all of these stakeholders together. Let's think through the problems. I had the opportunity of visiting Madison's home. It is a museum now in, I believe, Madison County. It's not far from where I live. And some of the things they were doing those days, they were thinking of generations down the line.
Yeah.
And Madison would invite friends
Mm-hmm.
to come over for dinner.
Okay.
And when they come over for dinner, after dinner, every time he goes into his kitchen to have lunch or whatever, breakfast, an idea pops into his mind. And what he does is he writes them on his walls. So when he invites friends to come over, and these are what we would term the stakeholders, and they would broach over the ideas. They would discuss them. They would tear the ideas apart and come up with a solution. And one of the things they all had in common was the fact that we're not doing this for us, but for generations to come. And that is the United States we see today.
Wow.
So until our leaders, excuse me, not our leaders, our political managers pause, get some little sense, and say, let's pause because what we're doing is not working. What is the problem? Let's bring stakeholders together. Let's broach over these issues. Let's discuss these issues and find solution to the problem. We don't want school people who are not educated because they are the dangerous ones who are killing our societies. The dangerous thing you can do is to school a person without giving that person an education.
Education. Wow. Wow. Do you have to? Do you want to add anything to it, Mr. Wa? Please.
Yeah. Also, in the short term, our system should start rewarding excellence. Before you put anybody into any position, what has the person done before? Does the person have a track record?
Mm-hmm.
You just don't pick anybody and just put him in a position where he will wield some power and influence it without knowing what that power and that influence can do. So please let us do that. Devise a system where excellence is rewarded and mediocrity is actually demoted. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, you are gradually getting to the end of the discussion, but we have issues of overstate, leaders, dictators, like abuse of executive powers, embezzlement of national funds, abusing of human rights, nepotism, hindrance of freedom of expression, like you've already said. We've seen Rwanda as a test case. I mean, that is so beautiful that we can all infer from. How can our leaders, I mean, the question I asked previously was what you know, and the models that you can actually come about. But this time, after actually narrating a few problems or crises that is actually going on our continent, how can we have leaders that can provide total transformation, which involves a paradigm shift driven by changes in mindsets?
One of the major ways we can do that, again, is to go back to groom the youth
Okay,
with a proper understanding of leadership.
okay.
Number two, I don't want to say we have to um, wait, but we would have to make sure that we. But you see, this is a very dicey. It is these people in power who are supposed to educate the masses for them to, like Mr. War said, not just put anybody in power, but
Huh?
get the person's track record. But then again, that is why we have a platform like yours. We have so many other platforms. Let's continue to push.
Push, yeah.
Let's continue to educate the people. Because one of the things I have come to understand that words are powerful. It is not power because it influences people. It is power because it unlocks an aspect of somebody's brain. It unlocks a certain part of a brain
Yeah.
that will cause people to wake up. So let us continue to do what we're doing. Let us continue to talk to the people. And believe you me, I don't know. I always tell people I have so much confidence. I have so much hope that one day Magufuli will come up. Somebody is preparing himself or herself somewhere. And one day when the time comes, he or she will show up on the scene.
That's
So
interesting. I mean, I'm so glad that you said it, but I'm sorry to interject.
that's okay.
But many a times we see people, just on the campaigning trail, campaigning. You see them in just t-shirts and whatever. So I mean, with nothing. Now they go into politics, and then within a few months, you see them in mansions, in cars, and whatever. And then you are coming in with this mindset, shift where and people can just go in there and serve. how are you going to do that? Because, when you look at the youth now on social media, everybody wants to be rich. Everybody wants to be, in that kind of place where he or she will feel part or will feel um, accepted, based on their social status. How are you going to do that? Because um, I don't think this will happen in our lifetime, but maybe the next. Because everybody wants to be rich now. Everybody wants to be, big. How are you going to do this? I mean, that would be my final answer, because this paradigm shift is going to take something to actually, I would say, take over. But let's see and hope. Let's pray and hope that this paradigm shift will take place.
One of the assets any Magufuli out there listening to me has is the youth. They are so hopeless. They they are looking for directions.
Okay.
So if anybody pops up who has prepared himself or herself for leadership, that person should target the youth
Mm-hmm.
because they are going to be the backbone of your success to getting into places of power as far as voting and the voting is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But then again, as Mr. Awua said, your track record would have to prove that you're capable of doing it. And one of the things we have to, as I said, keep talking to educate the youth to understand is to begin not to rely on the 5 cities or 10 cities or the 100 cities that are given to them during the elections, but they will begin to probe these people, find out their track records
Okay.
before giving them the power, before giving them the positions.
Mm-hmm.
So you said something about it might not happen in our lifetime. Yeah, it might not, but I believe it might also happen. I want to keep it open because
Yes.
whoever thought that a black man would be the
First.
president of the United States, about, let me say, 30 years back or even 20 years back, whoever thought? But it did happen, because somebody prepared himself
Mm-hmm.
by name Barack Obama, and he swept people off their feet.
Yeah.
So I believe people are preparing themselves. I strongly believe that. I know some people who I keep telling them, please look at the political scene, and some of them are very reluctant.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to, but I believe that these are people who are seasoned, who've prepared themselves, who understands leadership, who understands the principles of leadership, and they've cultivated those principles in their personal lives, who can make a difference. So I believe that the same youth who happens to be one of the things I see, what is going on with the youth today is because they lack directions. They lack directions. So anything they see that seem good
Good.
attracts them.
Mm.
So all these things going on social media, it is because they don't have any directions. So they get attracted to anything and in all forms of diverse ways, So I believe that if somebody pops up on the scene and begins to give direction and hope to the youth, the audacity of hope. I believe so much in that statement, the
Yes.
audacity of hope. And that is exactly what happened when
Mm.
Barack Obama popped up on the scene. He gave so much hope to the youth,
Mm.
and the youth put him there.
Wow.
So I believe that the youth is one of the assets any Magufuli out there can use to put himself up there to help change the system or to help steer the system in its right direction.
That's amazing. You know, Mr. Awua, I just want you to add your voice, but then I just want you to talk about, you know, leadership and corruption in Africa, because we cannot, you know, end discussion without not talking about, you know, corruption where our youth feel that every person can be, you know, rich instantly. I mean, once you just go into politics, you just get enriched. You know, like you're just enriching yourself, and then just overnight, you are on top. You've got mansions, you've got cars, and everything. How do we address, you know, leadership and, you know, corruption? You know,
I believe our biggest problem on the continent is this issue that you just brought up, the issue of corruption. And even before I start, I would like to quote our elders. Opanyi a otena fie ma si dua efo no, onye panyi papa. Opanyi tena fie ma nkwada ewe nanka, ye kan nanka wefo a, oka ho bi. To wait. You observe any system which is corrupt, it is corrupted from the top. It is never from the bottom. Awua or pro efrinity. As long as our people understand that if there is a corrupt system in place, it is not just the people that are corrupted. It is at the top echelons of leadership that are corrupted. We will start looking at the problem from the top to the bottom. Because when Magufuli came into power and he said that nobody is going out of the country on even on a private jet or any of that sort, it stopped. You see, there is something called leverage, and only those at the top have it. If I go into my neighborhood and I say that nobody can have a funeral on just one Saturday, nobody is going to it's not going to happen. It will never happen. Excuse me to use this example. The Otumfo Asantehene came back from South Africa and said that he was going to commemorate something. And for 3 months, nobody can have a funeral in the whole Asante kingdom. I'm not talking about the Asante region, the whole Asante kingdom. People scrambled to change the dates of their funeral. He just spoke the words and it worked. So if we are going to tackle corruption, it has to come from the top. This is what I will say to end it. If I have sheep that are unruly and I actually hire a shepherd and pay the shepherd to shepherd my sheep, the shepherd has no excuse to come back to me and say, oh, your sheep are unruly, they are undisciplined. What are you talking about? The reason why we put you there is to shepherd the sheep. And Nana, people are sheep. They will follow the leader. So for us to correct this issue of corruption, which is the canker that is eaten into Africa, it has to come from the top. And the youth, they have had it to the end of their theaters. And that's why you saw the Arab Spring. It is coming. We don't advocate for any violence, but history tells us that in France, in Germany, in so many other places, you continue to do things that do not work, people will find a solution to that thing that do not work. So I'm throwing this to the leadership. If the system is corrupt, you have the leverage to corrupt the system, to correct the system rather. I don't have that much leverage compared to, let's say, the CEO of a company or the KMA boss or the market woman's organizing secretary. There are levels of leadership, and at every level, the one at the top has the most leverage to correct it. So for corruption to stop in Africa, it has to come from the top. But those of us at the bottom, that we are agitating like we are doing today, we need to keep on putting on the pressure so that we can get a critical mass of people thinking about these things. That, oh, corruption there, I mean, even the policeman is corrupt. No, there is somebody above the policeman who can actually make it possible for the policeman not to be corrupt. So, as we say in the US, the buck stops with the president. And it is the same leadership concept that our forefathers said, openia or tenefie said we afford. So it has to come from leadership, and it has to come from those at the very top. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, I like that tree proverb. Openia or tenefie ma. Could you please repeat it?
Asedia.
Asedia.
Yeah, it is a type of beans. The one with the long. You have to put it in the sun for a long period of time before you can cook it. So if you are an elder in the house and the acidua is out there and it is about to rain, and you say, oh, the kids didn't take it out, and you leave it for it, because after it is rain on the acidua, it is practically useless. So you as an elder in the house, you are useless as far as that is concerned, because you allowed the rain to fall on it. And that's what we're saying. You allow the system to be corrupted. Why are you there? You have no use. You need to be removed.
Wow. Well, leaders, I don't even know what to say again because they've said it all. And we are far behind time. So I don't want us to carry on. But I'm so grateful to you guys for your patience, for your diligence, and also for accepting my invitation to come and educate us on leadership. Before we end, I've got lots of comments that I would want us, like all of us to share. I have Jemima Jumpo who say, we are learning. I've got, and she said, oh, so leadership is a noun. And I've got Wilson Mwangi all the way from Kenya. I also said amen and amen. And I've got Alex Covey-Hagen also saying lots of facts being expunged on leadership. And I've got my own Hajia Alima Sajitu, very good line of questioning and the answers on point. And Hajia also continued to say leadership is services. And Hajia also said, I like the explanation of tradition and how some leaders use that for their interest. Very true. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I mean, there are lots of comments there, but I can't read everything else there. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, I've got another one. Osas, I also saying corruption and leadership have been identified as the primary root causes of underdevelopment in Africa. Real facts tonight. It means people are online watching and being empowered and also being educated. Together, we are going to change our mindsets. Together, we are going to make Africa great again, because I believe in Mother Africa. Africa will only succeed when its rich diversity is equitably represented in its leadership. So thank you. Thanks for your company. And once again, if you're in the UK watching me, happy Mother's Day. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.